Hi, I'm Pam, and welcome back to the channel. It's still summertime, and there's still plenty of time to make wonderful desserts with all of the fresh summer produce that's available. So today, we're going to make a fresh blueberry cobbler, and today's recipe comes from Amy Vanderbilt's complete cookbook, which was published in 1961, and interestingly enough, rather than photographs, she had illustrations done, and the illustrator was none other than Andy Warhol. Amy Vanderbilt was considered an expert in etiquette, and she was the author of Amy Vanderbilt's Complete Book of Etiquette. She also was a distant cousin of the one and only Cornelius Vanderbilt, who started the Vanderbilt family fortune. Back in 1961, outgoing President Eisenhower announced that diplomatic and consular relations with Cuba were being severed. And a little later on, JFK, John F. Kennedy Jr., was sworn in as the 31st President of the United States. Popular movies that year included Disney's The Parent Trap, starring Haley Mills, Breakfast at Tiffany's with Audrey Hepburn, and The West Side Story with Natalie Wood. And music-wise, the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Number 5, Runaway by Del Shannon. Number 4, Crying by Roy Orbison. Number 3, Michael by the Highwaymen. Number 2, I Fall to Pieces, Patsy Cline. And number 1, Tossin' and Turnin' by Bobby Lewis. I guess the cats aren't fans of 1961 trivia. In any case, let's get right to the cooking. Our recipe for blueberry cobbler includes 2 cups of blueberries, 1/3 cup sugar, 1/8 teaspoon powdered cinnamon, 1 cup sifted cake flour, a teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, 2/3 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup shortening, 1/2 cup of milk, and a teaspoon of vanilla. The first step is to get our blueberry filling ready. So I've already greased my baking dish. I used shortening. You could use butter. I suppose you could even use some sort of cooking spray. The recipe calls for an 8 square inch baking dish. I didn't have one, so I am using this 11 by 5, I believe it is. It should be fine. Whatever you have on hand, that's the approximate size. You need to wash and drain your berries. You need 2 cups of blueberries, which is approximately 8 ounces, just about one of these 8-ounce packages. So I've gone ahead and I've already washed and drained my blueberries. Be sure to pick out any weird looking ones, any shriveled ones, and make sure that you also remove any stems that might still be on the berries. We're going to combine our berries with 1/3 cup sugar, which I've already measured out here. So I'm just going to pour that in, as well as 1/8 teaspoon of cinnamon. When you're baking, it's really important to level out your dry ingredients, especially when it comes to things like baking soda, baking powder. Your leavenings, too much or too little, will spoil the final result. So I'm mixing this all together. Notice I'm scooping gently from the bottom. I don't want my blueberries to get mangled before I put them in my dish. You want to just make sure that the sugar and the cinnamon are evenly coating your blueberries. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and pour them into my prepared dish. Make sure we get them all out. Oh, the sugar mixture has a tendency to get lumpy at the bottom, so you'll want to scoop that out and evenly distribute it. Okay. All right. My berries are ready to go. And that's it for the filling, super simple. And now we're ready to make our dough topping. Ingredients here are a cup of sifted cake flour. I didn't have any cake flour on hand. I did have regular flour. I went ahead and pre-sifted it. If you have a fancy sifter, you can use that. Or like me, you could just use one of these sifters here, only you have to do a little more manpower to use that. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that in. And I want to sift it together with my baking powder, which I have a teaspoon of baking powder already measured out here, as well as 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm using pink Himalayan salt because that's what I had on hand. I'll obviously use whatever salt you happen to have to hand. And so now I'm going to just tap my sifter here so that everything blends together nicely, and it doesn't take long. The reason it's important to pre-sift the flour before mixing it with the other ingredients is to make it a little light and airy. You don't want it to be lumpy. And as I said earlier, it's really important when you measure out your dry ingredients to level them off. And when it comes to flour, don't pack it into the measuring cup. Just lightly spoon it in and then level off the top, and you're good to go. So I've gone ahead and sifted my dry ingredients together, and then the rest of the ingredients I'm simply going to put into my standing mixer. Now the original recipe calls for a blender. I don't have a blender. I do have my standing mixer, however, so that's what I'm going to use. All right, so into your standing mixer or your blender, whichever tool you're using, you're going to add 1 egg, 2/3 of a cup of sugar, which I've pre-measured here, a 1/4 cup of shortening, and I'm using a spatula to get as much as I can out. A 1/2 cup of milk. You can use whole milk, you can use skim, you can use 1 or 2%, whatever you prefer. And the last ingredient is, oh, it's a new bottle. I forgot to take the security seal off. Is a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. I do prefer to use real vanilla in my baking. Some people use imitation, but I feel that vanilla, the real deal, is the way to go, although I know it can be expensive. And lock that. Almost there. The shortening is kind of the last thing that gets incorporated here. All right, that should do it. And now we're going to pour our liquid mixture over our flour mixture and stir it lightly until it is just combined. A cobbler is any fruit filling that's covered by a simple biscuit mixture or a simple batter. And cobblers originated in the British American colonies because the English settlers did not have the proper ingredients or equipment to create traditional English suet puddings for their desserts. And so they improvised, and the cobbler was born. Have the proper ingredients or equipment to create traditional English suet puddings for their desserts. And so they improvised, and the cobbler was born. Cobblers can consist of well, not just any fresh fruit, but you want to pick a fruit that's on the juicy side. So blueberries, cobblers. Peach is another popular one, cherry. Okay, looks like that's just about done. And the last step is to spread it over the berries. Just get that in there as evenly as possible and scrape out all the batter. Make sure we get it all out. Oops. Some of these berries want to seem to jump out of the pan here. And we're ready to bake. Make sure you've preheated your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and pop it into the oven. Bake for 35 minutes and we'll see it when it comes out. Well, the blueberry cobbler has just come out of the oven. It smells delicious. I can smell the cinnamon. The blueberries, as you can see, have just bubbled up a little bit around the edges. And the batter topping is a light, delicate brown. So I'm going to let it cool down just a little bit and we'll do a taste test. Any kind of cobbler is best served warm, not so hot that you're going to burn your tongue or your guests are going to burn their tongues, but warm. And they're definitely improved by maybe a dollop of whipped cream, a scoop of ice cream. I don't have either of those on hand, so I'm just going to take a taste of it as is in one of my fun little vintage serving bowls. See the color of the blueberries? Looks delicious. And the batter topping has cooked all the way through. And the moment of truth. Absolutely delicious. The blueberries are fresh. The topping is light, not overpowering. You can just taste a hint of cinnamon. Again, this would probably be better with a dollop of cream or some vanilla ice cream perhaps, but it's delicious. I would absolutely recommend it. Super simple to make and your friends and family will love it. Thanks again for joining me at Pam's Speakeasy. I'm Pam. If you enjoyed this content, like, subscribe, you know the drill, and I'll see you next time.